So as a bank, I could potentially make way more income with RWA than they could in the old system. So it's a no-brainer for a lot of banks to even tokenize real estate, silver, and this is why we're seeing so much capital moving into this market. Today I'm going to be showing you how silver is on the blockchain, how XRP is doing this right now, how commodities are exploding and the capital that's coming to it, how RWA creates money, not just makes it, and for the banks, a money maker versus a money creator. Stay tuned. Well, first of all, how can you even put silver on the blockchain? Well, this is an asset that represents the price of silver on the blockchain. So similar to how a stablecoin is on the blockchain, this represents silver on the blockchain. So Kinesis silver, each token is backed by 1 ounce of investment grade bullion, and it's securely stored by Kinesis, a fully insured, audited vault, and their mission is to bring physical silver to the cryptocurrency market. So silver is expanding its market to crypto, and this is part of tokenizing all metals on the blockchain. And the point of that is to capture that market. It's a $200 million market, and it's moving towards decentralized finance. The reason why decentralized finance, in my opinion, is the future is because the transactions are faster, and you can also create liquidity pairs. And I have an older video that talks about that, how you can use your XRP in a stablecoin and capture the yield percentage of all the transactions. So imagine if you could take your silver coin and put it on the blockchain and make a trading pair for XRP and capture the yield for every transaction. That's a no-brainer for a lot of people. So similar to the gold rush, the people who made money are the people who sold the shovels. So silver on the blockchain they're just making money off of the transactions. And yes, you can make money off of silver, but retail interests on both sides, they're going, hey, it's outperforming Bitcoin at the moment. So I'm going to show you how, in my opinion, real world assets are going to be a game changer for not only making money, but creating money. Yeah, tokenizing silver. So gold is on XRP, and this is one of many, many blockchains that are doing this. And XRP is a big one, and this is going to be a no-brainer for a lot of people for institutional investments, when I think XRP will be a tier 1 and gold will be part of their reserves. So if they can take gold and put it on and tokenize it and keep it on their holdings, kind of what I showed you with Deloitte, where institutional banks are going to want to keep tokens rather than the physical asset, I think that's going to be a no-brainer. But first, you have to tokenize the commodities and put it on the ledgers. And XRP is ISO compliant, so that's a no-brainer. So RWA.xyz is a website that tracks stablecoins, treasuries, government debt, corporate bonds, and private credit. What that is, it's the token of those assets. So they represent the real-world asset on the blockchain. So they're basically creating a currency, an NFT, and putting it on the blockchain. And as I showed you in the past, investments and banks are going to want the token of the asset rather than the actual asset, in my opinion. If you can take your treasury bill and tokenize it, you'll have better, in my opinion, better regulation for auditors and creditors to say, hey, look at my private blockchain like R3 Corda. I have all this real estate that is tokenized. I have all this gold that is tokenized. And so instead of having the physical gold in a vault, I can buy a coin and stick it on my balance sheet. RWA.xyz, I wanted to show you the capital that is flowing in over the past couple of years. And so yes, we had a slow plateau of just gold and all these commodities, but recently there's been a push, in my opinion, by banks saying, hey, I want to be able to tokenize this either for investors, but in my opinion, the ability to borrow against it faster and get liquidity way faster. So tokenized treasuries, a game changer for collateral in crypto markets, and that's to create money. We have about 7.5 trillion in foreign holdings in the old system, but tokenized treasuries, they have significantly evolved past earlier versions that were typically non-transferable or had inadequate liquidation. So in other words, They had these treasuries on their balance sheet. They couldn't transfer it. Auditors weren't happy, but now we can get instant liquidity, and I could send it to other people faster. So they go on to talk about how 170 billion, indicating that tokenized treasuries are just scratching the surface and poised for rapid growth. So we're not talking about retail investors. We're talking about institutional investors are more worried about tokenizing their assets to get liquidity faster, and so that, in my opinion, they could borrow more money. Tokenized U.S. Treasuries grew from 2 billion to 9 billion in just 18 months. BlackRock, Circle, they basically offer on-chain treasury bills as collateral, and decentralized finance, which is the shovel people, it's the building blocks to get US dollar, the stablecoin, faster. So remember, the whole point of this is to create money on this new system, and you have to take old system things like a treasury bill, put it on the new system like the ledger, and then you borrow against it in a USDC stablecoin. It's the same thing from the old to the new, but the only difference is it's a brand new untapped market. Big banks and financial institutions have already begun tokenizing debt instruments, and this is by Zoniqx, and they're helping tokenize debt instruments. So illiquidity goes to instant liquidity with tokens, and how this gets you money faster. So remember, in my opinion, this is more about auditing than it is about getting liquidity faster. If I can look at a balance sheet for a big bank and see that they have commodities and real estate as a token, for example, like an R3 Corda private settlement token, then you'll be able to get private credit immediately. And so there's a big push to tokenize their entire balance sheet, because then I can get money faster. So this is an untapped market, and collateral reuse is going to be very important. Reason being, imagine having your asset as a token and an asset in the old system. So you got money on two different systems. And so I think it's a no-brainer for institutional investors to move into this market, because yeah, you're kind of stuck in this old system where there's a lot of regulation, but if I can tokenize these holdings, I can then potentially borrow even more, and the reserve requirements, it might not be there. So tokenized deposits are more important than stablecoins. And so a stablecoin just represents the dollar on the blockchain. So yeah, you can have this on your balance sheet. Yes, you could potentially make more yields. It's limited because they are backed one-to-one, but a tokenized deposit is like a real estate fractional title like Dubai is doing. They're fractionalizing titles on the blockchain. But in my opinion, I think they can potentially borrow 100% of the value, and they only need 10%, similar to how it is in the fractional banking. I want to show you this graph real quick. So this graph is deposits at commercial banks. And back in 2020, we had a huge increase. And M2 is with savings deposits. So we're seeing a slow incline. And this is a good graph to give us an idea of what our total money supply is in the system. RWA gives you the ability to expand M1 and M2. So if you can borrow against your current assets and put it on the new system with RWA, you have the ability to create the new system. If you for example, you can potentially tokenize $100 million of real estate, borrow against it, and you can dictate if you want to then borrow against it again. Because remember, Dubai fractionalized the title. Banks have the ability to determine what this environment is and the risk associated with these tokens. So as a bank, I could potentially make way more income with RWA than they could in the old system. So it's a no-brainer for a lot of banks to even tokenize real estate, silver, and this is why we're seeing so much capital moving into this market. XRP, XCC, XLM, and HBAR, all those are ISO compliant, but that's just the building blocks for the new framework that's coming, in my opinion. We're at the very beginning stages of tokenizing everything. And I'm trying to really hammer on this channel of how we're going from the old to the new. And these coins that I'm showing you are level 1 of this entire new global economy, in my opinion. And I'm excited because the opportunity to expand in this market is huge. We're seeing it first with the big banks and the institutional investors, but I personally think you're going to start seeing it in your local economy. I'm excited for the future. Thanks for watching.